Long ago, an extraordinary event lit up the night sky over the small town of Bethlehem. A radiant star signaled a birth unlike any other, as angels announced to the world that a Savior had arrived. Yet, as this child grew into a man, he did not claim a political throne. He amassed no personal wealth and raised no army to conquer the region. Instead, Jesus spent his days walking from village to village. He operated simply as a humble teacher, sharing a radical message centered on God's love, the power of faith, and the necessity of forgiveness. But this raises an immediate question. How could a nomadic teacher, possessing no earthly authority, prove the cosmic claim that he was actually the Savior of the world? To establish his identity, he would have to demonstrate power over the fundamental laws of nature and the human body. His demonstration of power began quietly, rooted in everyday compassion. At a wedding in Cana, when the hosts ran out of wine, Jesus stepped in to save them from disgrace, performing his first public miracle by turning ordinary water into wine. Word of this event spread, and massive crowds began to track his every movement. They brought him the sick, the vulnerable, and the marginalized. In response, he restored sight to the blind and granted hearing to the deaf. These healings were often personal. When a man suffering from leprosy, a condition that made him an outcast from society, knelt and begged for help, Jesus reached out his hand, touched the man, and cured him instantly. This infographic visualizes the sudden, massive scaling up of his power. Faced with a hungry crowd of over 5,000 followers, Jesus took just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. He blessed them, and the food multiplied so vastly that everyone ate, with baskets still left over. His authority extended beyond physical ailments and food. While crossing the sea with his disciples, a terrifying storm threatened to capsize their boat. Jesus stood facing the violent waves and commanded, "Peace, be still." The wind stopped immediately. He bypassed the laws of physics again one night by walking across the surface of the water to reach his disciples. The most profound display of his power occurred at a tomb. When his friend Lazarus died, Jesus approached the burial site and called the man's name. Lazarus walked out, alive. This graph charts an escalating trajectory of supernatural power, from healing and elemental control to authority over life and death. By this point, Jesus demonstrated a level of command exceeding any earthly ruler. Instead of widespread acceptance, we see a jarring paradox. As the line crashes downward here, it represents humanity's actual reaction. Despite bringing life to the world violently rejected him. The very crowds that once followed him turned against him. Jesus was betrayed, arrested by the authorities, and openly mocked by the public. The escalation of hostility ended in a brutal physical reality. He was nailed to a cross, left to suffer and die. Yet, even as he endured the pain of execution, the core of his character held firm. He looked out at the people hurting him, prayed for them, and asked God to forgive them. Then, Jesus died. The man who had commanded the wind and raised the dead succumbed to execution, leaving his followers shattered and seemingly defeated. In refusing to retaliate, his death acted as a final, grueling application of his own teachings on unconditional love and forgiveness. 3 days passed in silence, but on the 3rd morning, his followers discovered something incredible. The heavy stone sealing the burial site had been moved, and the tomb was entirely empty. Jesus had arisen from the dead. He appeared to his disciples and many others in the following days, proving he had conquered death itself. Before returning to heaven, he gave his followers one final instruction. He told them to take everything they had witnessed, his message of love, faith, and salvation, and share it with the rest of the world. This map illustrates how those initial followers sparked a movement that spread rapidly. Today, that single point of origin has expanded into a global network of millions of people who continue to believe in and practice his teachings. Generation after generation, the record of his miracles, his teachings, and his compassion has continued to guide human history. For those who follow him, his life is the evidence that faith can overcome fear, love can overcome hatred, and with God, all things are possible.